Case 623 by Danny Yu. Chapter 8. And how long will we stand? After the death of Jorn Schmidt we scattered. We have become a thing of fractions, all heads and no body. Once in power, how long before our self-fashioned warlords turn on each other? Hydra needs a leader. Hydra has leaders. One leader. Pepper, Tony told the screen. Pepper, I'm sorry, I tried to tell you, You tried to tell me! Well, Tony, you failed! Pepper's eyes were red-rimmed, her voice pitched higher than normal, and something inside Tony twisted painfully just from looking at her. You're dying? How can you... Tony sucked in a deep breath. Pepper, I'm sorry, He swallowed. I was scared, all right? I was scared it would be like this, that I'd be upset, she asked. That I would flaunt my upsetness in your face. Well, I'm sorry, Tony, but that's what usually happens when you find out your friend is dying! Jarvis chose that moment to interrupt. Sir, it appears someone has Jarvis's voice cut off with a worrying drop in tone, followed by an electronic whine. The call to Pepper cut off at the same moment. Tony felt a rush of adrenaline immediately, the icy fear that weaved through him as he let the picture book drop and positioned himself so he was between Jamie and the door. He looked around for a weapon, swallowing a rather frantic need to keep his son safe. There, on the counter, the knife block. He just had to figure out how to get there without leaving Jamie exposed and then... Fuck you, Fury! He spat. Stop dismantling my AI! You kiss your sub with that mouth? Fury asked, stepping the rest of the way into the room. Jamie wriggled and squealed behind Tony. Little idiot already had a concerning love for pirates. Tony wished he had time to wean him of that. Tony groaned, still more than a little annoyed, and very disconcerted about the ease with which S.H.I.E.L.D. could apparently take out Jarvis. He'd have to upgrade the code so that... no time. I told you I don't want to join your super-secret boy band. I've got other priorities. Jamie crawled over his thigh, reaching for the fallen picture book they'd been busy with before the preparation, and Tony had to scramble to scoop him up before he dropped off the couch and hurt himself. No, Fury said with a frankly annoying little laugh. See, I remember. You do everything yourself. How's it working out for you? Jamie had given up on the picture book now and was making grabby ends for Fury, which... just wrong. Tony didn't know whose genes it was that were showing right now, but it sure as fuck wasn't his. The wiggling was getting out of control, though, so Tony carefully sent him down on the floor, kept half an eye on him as he returned his attention to Fury. He paused, kirked again. He felt completely wrong-footed, and that was not something he ever wanted to be around a guy like Fury. His mind went into deflect mode on autopilot, proving it was still functioning despite the pounding headache he seemed to have full stop these days. I'm sorry, I don't want to get off on the wrong foot. Do I look at the patch or the eye? Fury just kept looking at him with that small, unaffected, I've got a secret you're not in on smile, which did absolutely nothing to make Tony feel at ease. You should be able to feel at ease in his own house, damn it! And Jamie, the little traitor, had gotten to his feet and was toddling unsteadily towards Fury, still making tiny grabby hands. Honestly, I've got a bit of a migraine going, Tony said, and this time the deflection wasn't automatic. It was fully intentional. He had a couple of days left to live at the very best, and he did not want to spend them watching Fury's stupid pirate patch and listening to his stupid cryptic words. He wanted him out so he could get back to reading Jamie his story. So I'm not sure if you're real or if you're... He shrugged. Fury took a step closer and scooped Jamie up off the floor, making sure to hold him where he couldn't reach the patch, and Tony felt his teeth grind. It wasn't that he thought Fury would hurt the kid or anything like that. It was just... whole situation. Uneasy. Yeah, I about covered it. I am very real, Fury said, actually patting Jamie's messy dark hair with his free hand. I'm the realest person you're ever gonna meet. Tony rolled his eyes. Just my luck. Fury walked closer, managing somehow to look no less imposing, holding a pajama-clad toddler who was reaching almost frantically for his eye patch. And then he kept walking, getting straight into Tony's space, leaning down to pull aside the collar of Tony's t-shirt and exposing the rash. That's not looking so good. I've been worse. Tony lied, reaching out and grabbing his mug of lukewarm coffee, drinking down the last dregs, if only to expel Fury from his personal bubble. He heard footsteps then, looked over at the deck door, only to find... What the hell, Rushman? Is that a SHIELD uniform? Oh? He took a couple of moments to blink, make sure he'd seen right, but yeah, that was definitely Rushman. Definitely armed. Definitely SHIELD. You're fired. That's not up to you, she said, and whatever the oven-loving fuck was this even? How was this his life? What the fuck was SHIELD doing spying on him? Last he checked, they were all playing for the same team. Friendly teams, at least. Mostly. Tony didn't really like pirates, especially ones who took down his software and stole his baby. Tony, Fury said, wrapping his free arm around Rushman and giving her a squeeze. And yeah, okay, Tony was definitely hallucinating because Fury was being affectionate with Tony's son and his former personal assistant right in front of him, and that was just not a thing that could possibly be real in any universe. I want you to meet Agent Romanov. Tony reached up, massaged the bridge of his nose. What even was his life? He said, because what the fuck else was the guy supposed to do when the world was suddenly one big fat joke? I'm a SHIELD shadow, Rushmanov explained. Once we knew you were ill, I was tasked to you by Director Fury. Which, how do they know he was sick, bastards? Tony wanted to grit his teeth, kick them all out, and go back to just reading with Demi, but he didn't see that happening anytime soon, which meant smile and take it and hope that meant it would be over sooner. So that's what he did, plastered his best bored smile on his face, and kept his voice pleasant. I suggest you explain yourself. You've been very busy, Fury said, letting Rushmanov go and shifting Jamie so he was once again further away from the eye patch. Made your loyal PAO CEO, churned out 2 years' worth of inventions in less than 6 months, let your friend fly your suit to the nearest Air Force base. Now, if I didn't know better... You don't know better, Tony cut in. Good reason for all that. Military's off my back now, right? Whoa, Fury said. The military's off your back. You're Iron Man, and you just let them have it. What happened to indentured servitude and prostitution? I thought you had a spine, man. He glanced to his side at Rushmanov, who was smiling faintly, and that faint smile was faintly Fury-like and utterly infuriating. According to Mr. Stark of a few days ago, he said, Stan can kiss his ass. Or was it kick? Tony let out a breath, desperately wanted to snatch the still giggling Jamie out of Fury's arms. Maybe then he'd feel a bit less cornered, a bit less ganged up on, and fuck, couldn't they just leave him the hell alone? What do you want from me? He asked, suddenly unutterably exhausted. What do we want from you? Fury parroted. Nuh-uh, what do you want from me? He was gesticulating wildly now, looking like he might actually be upset. Jamie giggled for a moment like it was all a great game, then settled down, suddenly quiet, a strangely thoughtful look on his chubby little face, as if he was finally catching up on the tense atmosphere in the room. Then he turned his head and bit his few tiny teeth down on Fury's earlobe. Fury pulled him off before he could do any damage, put him firmly back on the floor. Tony picked him back up, feeling a lot prouder than he probably should as he pulled it to his chest. You, Fury said, voice rising further as if he was actually something like angry. A tiny bead of blood bloomed on his earlobe. Have become a problem that I have to deal with. Rushmanov had slipped off to somewhere, and Tony suddenly had a bad feeling about all this. Not just the annoyed, unsettled feeling from before, but an actual bad one, like he might be in real danger with these people. He pulled Jamie closer, and the toddler snuggled tight against him, small hands fisting around handfuls of the fabric of Tony's shirt. Contrary your belief, Fury continued, you are not the center of my universe. Yeah, I get it, Tony muttered, the placating words coming automatically, the way they always did when he was caught aback by that cold swoop and clench in the pit of his stomach that still never failed to make him think of Howard. Fury barreled on as if he hadn't even heard. I've got bigger problems than you in the southwest region to deal with. He snapped his fingers. Hit him. And suddenly there was a very sharp pressure against the side of his neck, the feeling of something cold sliding in, something sliding cold and sluggish through his veins. Tony flinched automatically, and Jamie began to cry. God, what are you, going to steal my kidney and sell it? Tony heard himself ask. His heart was pounding, his whole body cold and tight with fear, and Jamie's cries were echoing in his ears, and he just... What the fuck were they doing here? What was going on? What did they want with him? Could you please not do anything awful for 5 seconds? Tony asked, somehow getting his voice under some semblance of control so it wasn't shaking, the words not stuttered. Never show fear. He managed to get one trembling hand to stroke up and down Jamie's small back, pressed a kiss to the top of his head. He didn't feel like he was dying any more than he already had been, so there was that. "What did you just do to me?" he asked, blinking. He was feeling better, he realized, in an undetached way, despite the bandit clawing at him and his heart still pumping madly. The headache was dimming, along with the pain in his gums and throat and, well, everywhere. "What did we just do? Fool you?" Fury corrected, voice far softer now. Something almost gentle had settled over his face. "That's lithium dioxide. It's gonna take the edge off. I'm trying to get you back to work." "Right," Tony said, too shocked suddenly in the wake of the fear to feel much of anything. In his arms, Jamie was calming down too, eyes strangely distant as he stuck his thumb in his mouth for a moment before pulling it back out with a start. Something was off with that, but Tony couldn't worry about it right now, couldn't even process his own relief and unwilling gratitude. "Give me a couple of boxes and I'll be right as rain."
"It's not a cure," Rashmanov said. "It just abates the symptoms."
"It don't look like it's going to be an easy fix," Fury agreed. Tony could barely even feel the disappointment, knew it would be crushing him later. Mostly it was just resignation. "Trust me, I know. I'm good at this stuff." He took a breath. "I've been looking for a suitable replacement for palladium. I have tried every combination, every permutation of every known element." He felt heavy now, tired again, despite the boost the neck stabbing had given him, the resignation like a fucking blanket that still mostly just left him wondering what they wanted from him. "I'm here to tell you," Fury said, "that you haven't tried them all." "I'm so sorry, Pepper. I'll tell you later," Tony said as he directed a couple of the security guards to get the model down and into his car, Jamie a comforting weight against his chest. "Really, I will, but I gotta go take care of the dying thing first." He was still reeling from all of it, from the new side of Howard that had been revealed, the strange words and cryptic messages in that old video, from being put on house arrest, and the fact that Coulson had actually spoken baby to Jamie. On top of that was the manic need to work, to keep going, that always came with being on the verge of solving a problem. And there was hope in there too, that he might actually make it to the other side. Too much of everything to feel much of anything right now except urgency. Palladium concentration. 10%. "And dropping, sir," Jarvis added. The taste of coconut still flooded Tony's mouth, and Tony had a feeling he'd always associate that taste with relief, sheer and powerful and incredible, with being alive. He didn't know if he'd ever figure out how this new element had not only been able to stand in for and do better than the palladium, but also somehow flush it out of his system. Right now, it didn't matter. He rushed upstairs and pulled Jamie tight against him, his whole body feeling weak even as he knew he was stronger than he'd been in months. He barely kept himself from sobbing with the relief. Wasn't sure it had all even properly sunk in yet. Jamie patted his cheek clumsily. "Dede!" he said. Tony felt himself grin. His eyes stung, his mouth tasted like coconut. "Yeah, I know, baby boy. Love you too. We've still got a nice long road ahead of us." "You put hammer tech on my suit?" Tony asked. "Hey, I kept them off your back, didn't I?" "I'm keeping this, by the way," Rhodey said when they stood on the rooftop, disaster narrowly avoided. Tony rolled his eyes. "Sure you are," he said. "In which case you can give Pepper a lift back to the hotel. I'm going to go spend some time with my favorite guy." "You're a big, disgusting sap!" Rhodey called after him, but there was real fineness in his voice, so Tony let his slide. "Whatever you say, Sourpuss." "I don't think I want you looking at that," Fury said, sliding the folder away from Tony. "I'm not sure it pertains to you anymore." Tony frowned because, he hadn't particularly wanted to be part of the super secret boy band. He had a kid to take care of, after all, and a company to invent stuff for, and, well, point was, he didn't have time. Didn't mean he had to like that he was apparently not part of it any longer, and that it wasn't because of his own choice. "Now, this, on the other hand," Fury continued, "is Agent Romanov's assessment of you." He handed a different folder over. "Read it." "Personality overview," Tony read out loud. "Mr. Stark displays compulsive behavior." Tony looked away from the paper, met Fury's eyes. "In my own defense, that was last week." Fury simply kept looking at him, mostly passive, but with something strange, lingering on disappointment in his gaze. "Prone to self-destructive tendencies," Tony read. He rolled his eyes. "I was dying. I mean, please, and aren't we all?" He looked back down at the file. Textbook paranoia. Does not trust anyone he doesn't have a long involved history with, authority figures in particular. Headstrong. He glanced up. Agreed. Unsuitable for teamwork and can be considered compromised through the fact that if he believes a mission even slightly at odds with his son's welfare or safety, he will abandon it immediately. Tony frowned. You know that's a good thing, right? That's called being a good loving father. He sighed. Ah, here it is. Recruitment assessment for Avengers Initiative. Iron Man, yes. He looked up, began to put the folder away, more than a bit annoyed that he'd had swimming pool time interrupted for this. I gotta think about it, he said, somehow keeping from rolling his eyes. He still wasn't joining up. Wasn't a joiner, especially of something that would give him less time with Jamie. Riddled, Fury said. His expression hadn't changed one bit. Tony opened the file back up, flicked through to the page he'd been reading from before. Tony Stark not... He blinked. Not recommended. That doesn't make any sense. How can you approve me but not approve me? I got a new taker. I'm trying to do right by Jamie. I'm in a stable-ish family situation. And what the fuck even was this? What was he arguing for? What was it about rejection that always made him want to be a junior anyway, do anything for that tiny slice of approval from old men he didn't actually give two fucks about? Which leaves us to believe that at this juncture, we'd only like to use you as a consultant, Fury said, getting up and sitting on the table instead, meeting Tony's gaze from above and somehow not looming over him. For a moment, he kinda reminded Toby of Obi. Not Stain, but the Obi he thought he knew in his childhood, the proud and sometimes disappointed father figure he trusted to be in his corner. It was beyond disconcerting. Tony kept looking at him for a moment before shifting his gaze straight ahead, swallowing down something bitter. Then he gave a mental shake of the head. Fuck this. Fuck the bastard for making him want something he had no business wanting in the first place, something he already decided he didn't want. He got to his feet so he no longer had to look up, stretched out his hands for Fury to shake. You can't afford me, he said. Then he turned around to leave the workshop and went to pick Jamie, still just in his swim trunks, out of the playpen in the corner. Something didn't sit right, though. Something, probably that part of him he hated so much, that part that was still a small boy desperate for approval, or maybe the part of him that wanted to piss all over people who inconvenienced him, made him turn back around. Then again, I will waive my customary retainer in exchange for a small favor.
Blood toxicity, 0%.
See? Tony said, pointing at the numbers while Pepper looked over his shoulder. See, I'm not dying. Would have been better if you hadn't found out in the first place. The look Pepper shot him was both endlessly relieved, endlessly fond, and endlessly infuriated! I still wish you told me sooner, she said. She took a deep breath, kissed his cheek. You owe me, she said. Big time. And if you ever pull something like this again, I swear to God. Tony managed to smile despite the squeeze in his chest. You're one of my best friends, too. You know that, right? She gripped his hand, squeezed it. I know. Tony fell asleep in the rocking chair in the nursery that night. Couldn't bring himself to leave. Couldn't bring himself to stop looking at Jamie, stop tasting the relief that he'd get to be here, get to see his son grow up, get to teach him to ride a bike, to swim, to read and do math and programming and whatever they wanted. His cheeks were wet, but he couldn't be bothered to dry them. They'd just get wet again. But he was allowed. He was alive, was going to be alive tomorrow, and the next day, and the next year, was going to get the chance to raise his son, to be there for him, to work his ass off, to be the father Jamie deserved. All the time in the world.